Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so very much for joining me. Happy New Year, happy 2024. Wishing you nothing but love and light and laughter, health, strength, joy, happiness, abundance, increase, and everything that is on your heart. I wish you all the best in 2024. I have great news. I have special news, but before we get to that, I have an even more special conversation that I'm having with someone who I absolutely admire for the work that she has done and that she continues to do. But before we jump into that, in case you stumble upon this video, you have absolutely no idea who I am. I am Terri-Karelle Reid, your Jamaican girl. I hail from the beautiful island of Jamaica. And if you ever want to learn more about me, you can visit Terri-Karelle.com. So who will I be having this conversation with? For those of you who've been a part of the TK tribe, you have seen me speak on issues like inclusion and equity, equality, integration, accessibility for communities, people with disabilities. It's something that is extremely passionate to me. And so I really would like to thank the US Embassy for helping me to facilitate this conversation. I am going to sit down with the phenomenal, the hardworking, the good troublemaker, Sara Minkara, who is the Special Advisor on International Disability Rights. She's the highest ranking officer on the issues of disability rights in the US State Department. Cannot wait to sit down with her. She has been honored, she has been recognized, she's been acknowledged all over the world for all of the great things she has done. She's here in Jamaica just for a few days, and I get to have a very serious conversation of how we can move the conversations, get us acting, and get us not only granting accessibility, but empowering people with disabilities in Jamaica and around the world. Stick and stay, the conversation is next. I'm so privileged. I'm so honored to be sitting down here with Sara Minkara, Special Advisor on International Disability Rights. Welcome to Jamaica.
Oh my God, thank you, Terry. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh my goodness. You are amazing. I've had the opportunity of watching various videos and interviews with you. And before I even get into your role, which is a very big one, I wanted to find out from you, especially like how you, in an interview that you did, you said, you're a traveler, you're an introvert, you're a troublemaker, yes. And you didn't lead with the fact that you are blind.
Yeah. Yes.
And I loved that because typically persons with disabilities almost always have to declare it or they feel compelled to disclose it. How have you managed to accept your disability but not lead with it?
That's a really good question. I mean, and to your point, it's so true. I mean, the first identity that people see me with is my blindness, mm-hmm. which is part of who I am. I am a person with a disability. I'm blind and I'm proud of it. But I'm also more than that. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague. And as you said, I'm an introvert and troublemaker and traveler and so much more. But I also love math and I love mystery thriller audiobooks and I love to drink coffee. And we all as individuals have so many different identities that some are visible and some are non-visible. And mm-hmm. this is why, for me, whenever I introduce myself, I make sure I introduce other aspects of who I am as a person.
Yes.
So people see me as a person that they can relate to and that we can connect with. And then, but for me, embracing my blindness has been a journey where there's been moments where I have been ashamed of who I am. Mm-hmm. There's been moments where, I didn't feel I was included or welcome. There's moments where I just was so frustrated because the world wasn't accessible. But over time, I came to a point where I saw my blindness as a strength, as a purpose, and as a big part of who I am, but not everything.
So I've had the opportunity just recently after partnering with the Digital Foundation to meet and interview various persons who are blind. And we interviewed from 14 years old all the way up to 60 years old. And a lot of them, in fact, were not born blind. Mm-hmm. But at some point in time, they contracted a virus, it was negligence. You lost your sight at the age of 7. Yes. So tell us about that, the loss of that sight, having sight, losing it, the adjustment. What was that like for you?
It's a really good question. I mean, so both my sister and I lost our eyesight at age 7. We were born with macular degeneration, a corneal dystrophy that kind of kicks in at age 7. So 7 years old, I lost 98% of my sight, and then the remaining 2% usable vision was a gradual decrease over time until college age, where I just have light perception. I think when you lose your eyesight at a young age, if you have the following, which is really important. One is you have parents and a community around you that did not, my mom never allowed me to say the words, I can't do this because I cannot see. We were never felt that it was a pity, we were not pitied. She helped us embrace our disability as a point of strength. She made sure, she would always say, what are your dreams? What are your ambitions? What are your goals?
Yes.
That narrative at home is what's so important.
Yes.
Because then we were able to go out in the world. Let's be real, the world has a lot of barriers and inaccessibility in the systems, right? So she really got us to advocate for ourselves and believe that we exist and we have value to give to the world. That's one layer. The second layer is I was privileged enough to be in a town and a system in a country where there's laws and legislations that gave me the right to go continue going to my public school system, and where teachers had to include me in their classrooms. That in itself as well is really important. So yes, there was adjustment, but because I had the right support system for inclusion, I was able to do what I did.
Beautiful. And tell me about your role, because as a special advisor on international disability rights, and you mentioned parents, a lot of the times parents either don't understand what's going on. Some of them are actually in denial. They can't even process that their child has a disability. And then there are others who, because of maybe social and cultural stigma and their biases, and then there's shame and embarrassment, a lot of their children either don't go to school, are kept inside, are kept hidden, and therefore they actually don't get the chance to, as you say, to self-actualize and to know what it is, the value that they hold. How, as special advisor, or how do we even start having those conversations where we can target parents to let them know this is not a death sentence?
Exactly.
They are amazing. How do we start?
You bring up a really good point. Parents are the first society that kids are exposed to, the first community. Parents are I would say, one of the most important stakeholders, I would call them, when we want to talk about inclusion. You can have all the policies and legislations in the world, but if you don't work on supporting parents, giving them the support for them to be able to give that support to their kids, we will never achieve it. Because like you said, I will never judge a parent because I don't know what their experience is. Like you said, they're either dealing with stigma, they're afraid, they're overprotective, there's fear. And we need to make sure they're given the right tools and resources and support to be able to empower their kids. And this is where, when we talk to governments in our travels, when we talk to civil societies, when we talk even with media and narrative, we say we need to make sure we're giving the right support to parents. And for me, if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't be here.
I believe that. And it's interesting. You can always tell when you meet persons with disabilities, whether they're young or whether they're old, the way they speak with such power and such authority, and their self-advocacy, it's because that they had some sort of support. So for me, what I realized is that in order to be an advocate, I had to unlearn quite a lot of things. And sometimes it's harmful language. Things that we say that is just a part of who we are. Sometimes we do not know how harmful it is to people with disabilities. So I had to unlearn the language. I had to relearn what is it better to say. How do you invite people into your spaces? And when you were an undergraduate, you actually founded a program, Empowerment Through Integration. So what I've realized is a lot of the times we approach persons with disabilities as separate.
Yes.
And so they're still not integrated. They're still not a part of society. Talk to me about empowerment through integration, and why is that so important?
It's a really good question. I mean, Empowerment Through Integration was a nonprofit that focused on empowering youth with disabilities to be integrated into society. And we had programs for youth, inclusive summer camps, life skill training, where they were taught how to use, for instance, a white cane to walk independently, all these different life skills. Parents, family workshop, social and community service project, teacher training, a whole wide range of when we're looking at inclusion, you can't just look at one aspect.
Yes.
It's not enough for you to go and tell a blind kid, here you go, here's your white cane, and there you go. No, you need to actually address the entire ecosystem when it comes to inclusion.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, the goal is for, I get really frustrated when society puts the burden on the person with a disability to fix all the problems.
Yes.
It's not fair. You need to work on addressing it in employment, in education, in society across the board at large. But I want to go back to a point what you said, like how do we interact and engage with persons with disabilities? This story always resonates so much with me because there's this person named Kyle. I definitely would recommend people look him up. He climbs mountains. He's quadriplegic and he climbs mountains.
Yes.
Amazing. And he said when he was a young kid, 3 years old, his grandmother would take him to the supermarket, okay? And as she's going through the supermarket, people are walking by and they start staring at them because they're staring at her grandson. So then she would go up to the strangers like, hey, do you want to say hi to my grandson? That forced interaction achieves two things. Because first, the person's going to be like, oh my God, how do I say hi? How do I shake hands? What do I do? Oh
Put
my
on the
Lord.
spot, yes.
They're forcing the interaction, which is important. And it breaks down that wall of awkwardness and what do I do? Mm-hmm. But then also signals to our grandson, don't ever be ashamed of who you are. You belong, you exist, don't ever be ashamed of who you are. And that's what we need to do. We need to break down those barriers and those walls and create dialogue and interaction.
I love that answer. And it's interesting how you said dialogue. My daughter is 11, and in 5th grade last year, in Spanish class, they were being taught body parts. And so the teacher would write down the body part, and then the students had to say what that body part was for. Yeah. So when they got to las manos, which is hands, she wrote down to read and speak. And quite a number of the students were like, what?
What are you talking about?
Because most people wrote to write,
yeah.
right? To write. And she said to the teacher, well, to read if you are blind.
Oh my God.
And she said to speak if you are deaf. And it's something that moved me, and I said, if I haven't gotten anything right in life, that's probably one of the nicest things I can possibly think of.
So beautiful.
And it's because I made the conscious effort to put her in spaces where she met students who needed wheelchairs. She consigned that she would like chai latte from the deaf can barista, and so for her, she's not just looking at it from her perspective, but the perspective and the lens of another person. How can we get there? As special advisor, how do we get society to become conscious about seeing the lens, not from our standpoint, but from the person with disabilities?
That's a really good question because ultimately, when we talk about the inclusion of persons with disabilities into society, what ends up happening, we say, oh my God, we need to make it accessible, special needs, it's accommodation, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's costly.
It's costly. And I want us to shift from that to a point of when you're including persons with disabilities into the system, you're creating more options of how we navigate this world, more ways. And those more ways is actually going to benefit everyone because it's going to help us be able to really tap into other aspects of who we are. And I always give the example. I was a math major in college, and classmates would always come to me and say, Sara, what classes are you taking next semester? I'd be like, oh, why? They're like, well, Sara, whenever you're in the classroom, the professor becomes a better teacher. Why? Because he or she had to read what was on the board because I can't see. But because they had to be better explaining, that benefited everyone. So we need to understand disability integrating into the system allows for more ways to navigate the system, and that will benefit everyone. That's the narrative we need to keep on putting forward.
Beautiful. But what you also mentioned, which I find not fascinating, but it's something that resonated with me is I spoke to a blind student, and what he said is that in the curriculum, technical subjects like science, physics, chem, they're removed because there is this assumption that because you have a disability, especially blindness, then what's the purpose? What's the purpose of learning a technical subject? Yet still, here it is, you're like, I did math, I did econ. Math is very visual. Econ is also very visual. How do you do it? How do we also now infiltrate the different, as you said, the ecosystem, education, where biases exist in educational systems? for our children with disabilities.
I mean, it's so true. And actually, this aspect of removing math and science curriculum from the curriculum for blind students is common all over the world. And it's so fascinating because I'm like, how do we get to a point where society, and like you said, the biases in our educational system, in our curriculum building, right? And how do we get to a point where when you're bringing blind people into these fields, it's actually allowing for more innovations. And me as a blind person, when I majored in math, I was able to do things in my mind that other people couldn't because I was able to, I can't use pen and paper, so I've had to calculate things in my mind. I've had to visualize things in my mind, and that allowed me to do things in a better way at times. My sister's a blind scientist. So, how do we address this bias? This goes down to when we are teaching teachers, and teachers are really important. I believe every single teacher needs to go through inclusive education training, and that will make a huge difference.
Integration, I agree.
Because when I was in public school growing up, my mom would actually advocate to the school and say, my daughters are good at math and science. Put them in the advanced classes. And they're like, well, they're blind. They're like, well, so put them. And, so it's yeah.
No, I absolutely, I believe that. And it's something that they have to, it's all of these barriers, correct?
Yes.
Give us some stats for persons who might be saying, so why do I have to care? Like, how many persons with disabilities are there? How could they possibly help the economy? Give us an idea if you have any stats of how many persons exist in maybe this world with disabilities.
It's estimated that 1.3 billion individuals in this world are with a disability. 1.3 billion, 17% of the world population. That's number one. When we don't include persons with disabilities into our economy, it impacts our GDP by 7%. I think it's more than that, but let's take that stat, 7%. That's pretty huge. When you don't make your systems inclusive across the board, let's say e-commerce, all that kind of stuff, you're not able to tap into the disability community, exactly, and their family members. Their disposable income is $13 trillion. So you're not able to tap into that. It's a value. Let's start fixing those systems. I really get frustrated when someone comes to me like, oh, I'm designing this new app. And I'm like, well, is it accessible? Like, well, not now, later. I'm like, why later?
Yeah, we build it out later, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, that is actually interesting. I went to Singapore a couple of years ago, I think in 2019. Had the opportunity to sit with some of the students there who were, coming up with ideas, and they were brainstorming things that would make the world better, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that was a core feature of the conversations was that every design should be adaptive, and it should be accessible, and it should be universal.
Yes.
So their way of thinking is that if we start designing everything for the citizen who needs the most, like if you literally start with that person, then everyone else benefits.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that is what we would be able to do. So you're in Jamaica.
Yes.
First time, welcome.
Thank you.
What do you hope to learn? What do you hope to share? Do you have any insights with regards to our citizens with disabilities in Jamaica?
We're here for a few days, and we're really thrilled that we're here coming up on the 2nd year anniversary of the Disability Act that was adopted in February 14th, 2022.
Yes.
And Jamaica has been on this great journey of disability inclusion. We're later on meeting with civil society, organization for persons with disabilities. We're meeting with ministers from this labor, social security, and education and tourism.
Great.
And we're also meeting with the business sector and the tourism sector. And ultimately, our goal is to hear what are the needs of persons with disabilities from civil society. How can we keep on amplifying those in our meetings with governments? How can we also ensure that the business sector is seeing the opportunity of disability inclusion? And how can we share our technical expertise from the U.S.? We're still on our journey in the U.S. We're not done. Yes, it's been 50 years. We have a lot of learned lessons, a lot of great practices. How can we share those, and how can we continue learning together? But most importantly, and this is why we're here together, is narrative change.
Yes.
And this is where engaging with the media sector, entertainment sector, and influencers like you, it makes a huge difference.
No, that's beautiful. And how do we disrupt the narrative? I think that's extremely important. Just as how you said, our teachers need inclusivity training, so do our media, our journalists, our government, our civil society. Absolutely important. Would you say that the beauty of your blindness, because that's what you call it, you found beauty in your blindness, do you think it has influenced not just who you are today, but the trajectory and the journey that you've taken along this life?
Definitely. I think if I wasn't blind, I will say I would have been a boring person. That's the reality. So who knows what I've been doing. But my blindness gave me a purpose. My blindness gave me stubbornness, I would say, and it gave me a way to be more creative. And ultimately, you know, for us to really disrupt narrative, whether it's internally in our own selves, I think it's important for us to always keep on embracing all of who we are.
Yes.
And how do we keep on embracing all of our identities and not hear how society sees us, but we see ourselves from within. And on the other hand, from an external perspective, we need to have the difficult conversations. In order for us to disrupt the narrative, we need to have the difficult conversation, which is, why are you not special needs? Why you are special needs? You are a person, you know, that needs help. You are a person that's costly. You are a person that's a burden. We need to have those conversations where we address those, you know, assumptions. Whenever someone turns to me and says, "Sara, you have special needs," as a blind person, I turn to them. I say, "Well, you're sighted. In my mind, you have special needs. You need light." So, I mean, it's all how we look at things.
Perspective.
It is.
It's a perspective. No, I absolutely love that. And I think in a particular, I don't know if it was an address or if it was an interview where you stated that people always think that as special needs or persons with disabilities, it means that they require all of this care. When you said, well, we can give care.
Yes.
We can be caregivers.
Yes.
And you made a very important point, and you said, it's not that we are just resilient, but we're also innovative.
Yes.
So how do we reframe how we view persons? How do we redefine disabilities as we are talking and we're entering these spaces and having these very difficult conversations?
It's a really good question, because one is, you know, we need to keep on telling more of the stories of value that we bring to the world. I think we as a disability community, we're still stuck in certain bubbles.
Yes.
How do we break through that? And how do we actually work and partner with influencers, with the entertainment world, with the media world more intentionally, where we can share the stories of value. We can share what we can give to this world. And also we can make sure, you know, one of the things that we get frustrated with this concept, inspiration porn. Oh my God, you're supposed to inspire me because I'm blind and I have a job. No. I want you to see me as a human, like
this
anyone else.
This should be expected,
exactly.
the norm.
And I think this is where the stories of value, we need to keep on amplifying those, bringing them forward, mainstreaming them, and partnering up with entities outside of our own bubble and circle.
Joining as the highest ranked officer or the highest ranked person in the U.S. State Department on issues such as disability, when you first got that invitation, how did that make you feel? What went through your mind? I'd love to know. It's such a huge honor.
It's such a huge honor, such a huge responsibility, especially because the person that was the special advisor before me was Judy Human, who was a legend. She actually passed away last year. Oh. And she's a huge loss to our disability community, and she was a mother to a lot of us. Huge legend. And when I started, I was like, oh my Lord.
You're like, big shoes to fill.
Big
I don't know.
shoes to fill, exactly. But you know, actually something that she told me, she's like, Sara, you come from a different world. You come from the entrepreneurship world, social entrepreneurship world. You come from the grassroots level world. That unique experience is going to help shape how your vision, your strategy, and how you're going to approach this work.
Yes.
Embrace your experience and embrace who you are, and there's a reason why you were picked. And her words until now resonate so much and are so powerful. And I was able to really bring my past experience into this world.
Beautiful. And as you navigate, even as we speak about disabilities, people also see your other identities.
Yes.
You are a woman.
Yes.
You are Muslim.
Yes.
You are also young.
Yes.
And when it comes to policy and legislation and making change and creating change, how do all of those identities help to enhance your approach, that unique perspective that you bring to the table? How do you think?
I mean, it's such a good point. Like as a young, like you said, young hijabi blind Muslim woman of Arab origin, right? Those identities have helped me build relationships and bridges in different parts of the world, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's the Southeast Asia world or Central Asia. Or, there's certain parts of my identity that they'll be able to connect with, whether because I'm a young woman, right? I've been able to build trust, have really open and authentic conversation, and be able to bring my past experience into the conversations. And it's been powerful. Yes. And we've had success all over, across all parts of the world, which is really beautiful.
That is lovely. I'm on my side, what I hope to be able to do, even with the content that we create, we have our closed captions. This interview will actually have its own sign language interpreter, because we want to not just talk about it, but we actually want to show people that there is value.
Yes.
And inclusion and integration is not just something that you talk about, that it's something that you have to do.
Totally. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How did you go on this journey of, I wish there were more of you. Really, you're such a leader on this and being more inclusive in the media world. What was your journey?
So my journey, and I'll be very honest with you, my grandma, my community knows her as Jeannie Baby. She turned 92 in November. She's quite a firecracker. She taught me two very important things when I was probably around between 10 and 12. She said there are two very important things you have to be able to do in this life, if nothing at all. Yeah. She said, one, self-advocacy. And in the 80s, they would not have used the term self-advocacy because those two things going together never worked.
Yes.
But what she said is that you have to be able to stand up for what you believe to be right. You have to be able to express and articulate what you want, what you need, what you don't like, what you don't want for yourself. And that is you protecting and using your voice for yourself. She says, number two, if you're able to do number one, then number two is you must be able to use that same approach for persons, for communities, for people who do not have the same platform, access, or power or influence. So she said, every village needs a village lawyer. Yes. Every community needs a village lawyer. Yes. And if you stand on the sidelines and watch social injustices happen, then you are a part of the problem. And so because she fed that to me since I was a child, anytime I would take the bus, and because of the school that I went to in high school, I would always take the bus from students who attended Lister-Mayer School for the deaf. And there were boys who would always trouble the girls. And because they were deaf, they'd often get frustrated and they would try their best to tell them to stop. And I would always remember my grandma telling me, you have a duty. And so I would always get in these altercations. I would always be the village lawyer. I'd always be the one to step in and say, you can't do this. And I was doing this at an age of, 13, 14. And so I think over the years, what has happened is because of alignment and because of who I am, I've dived into the areas of, the deaf, the blind, persons with wheelchairs. I have collaborated with amazing entities who have helped me to be a bridge. And so that is what has led me here, and I've only gotten louder and prouder about being an advocate for persons with disabilities. And so much so, Special Advisor Sarah, that I said, all these years, I've used my platform, I've taught my community the things that I've learned, in terms of harmful language and what we should say and what we should do and how to be mindful of people, that this is when I've actually registered my foundation, the Open Door Jamaica Foundation, and it will actually serve persons with disabilities, children, young adults, and a part of it would be education and having these conversations. And so your interview actually will be how I will announce to my community that I've now formalized it to make my advocacy something that is more sustainable, more impactful, and more fulfilling.
So, Terri, that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Seriously, we need more of you in this world.
Well, that's the point of community building and having conversations like this, where we can now get other persons to share and to learn and to be a part of this movement, which I think is extremely important. It is unfair to meet persons who are blind or who are deaf, who have masters, who can't get employment. And so with the Disabilities Act coming in, this year will make the second year that businesses now will have to actively hire, will actively have to look at infrastructure to get persons who may need accessibility or may need tools to help them do their job. I'm going to make sure that they do not forget that that's a part of their priority. Not just profitability, but people, and not just one type of person, but all types. Do you have any advice for me?
Well, I mean, to be honest, this is so beautiful, and the fact that this foundation is going to be working on helping creating more awareness and more support, and also pushing on different sectors, including the business sector, to actually implement this act is really important. And the louder, the prouder, the better. Ultimately, I love the fact that you are using also your media kind of realm to keep on amplifying this, and we need more of that. So,
thank you. Any last advice? I know we have spoken, because we've spoken about so many different areas, the ecosystem, education, it's business, it's governmental. We know that change doesn't happen overnight. We know that Rome certainly was not built in a day. But what advice do you have for persons who are just average citizens? Because I believe it starts with us. What do you think? Where do you think we should start?
So, a couple things. One is, I would always start first as an individual, any of us, and I would look at two things on the individual side. One is, as we were talking earlier, we need to keep on embracing our own identities, our value, and understanding who ourselves from within. And that's a constant journey. It's not a switch of a button. And how do we really not listen to the noise around us, but listen within? But on the reverse, we should also understand ourselves and what assumptions we bring to the world. Yes. And we all bring assumptions. Anyone that tells you, I don't have any assumptions, sorry, but we all have assumptions, whether it's towards age or race or disability and whatever it is. And how do we really delay our assumptions and have one assumption when we approach any person, that this person has something beautiful to contribute? If we approach every single person with this assumption and trying to understand what do they have to contribute to this world, it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And my last, question, people always tell me, well, Sara, how do I interact with a person with a disability? What if they need help? What if, I don't know what to say? What if, whatever it is. I say, whenever you look at a person with a disability, just turn to them and ask them, tell me about your story. Tell me about who you are. That's it. Start the conversation. When you have that dialogue and that conversation, that's going to start creating that road towards inclusion, that road towards empowerment, and that road towards value.
I think that's absolutely profound, and I think it's powerful, because what you literally also said is, the fact that we have unconscious and conscious biases is that we always seem to pity persons with disabilities. And whereas some of them may be facing some really harsh circumstances, most of them do not want or require pity. Exactly. What they want is accessibility. Exactly. They want equity. Exactly. They want equality, and then move out of their way and let them do what they have to do. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you are leading this. I'm happy that you get to be a person at the table who offers insight and perspective and depth, as opposed to persons often speaking about persons with disabilities, but yet still they're not actually represented. You will absolutely be impactful. Just know that Jamaica, we're here. We're making our strides. We're taking it seriously. And I hope that we will constantly bridge this gap. And whenever you need the support, you just call on me. And whenever I need special advisor, Sara, I'm going to be like, okay, I have an idea. Yes. What do you think? But I do believe that the world can be a better place. And as much as the world is noisy, we have to always amplify the voices of persons who want to impact people in a very big way. And so on behalf of Jamaica, certainly on behalf of my community, thank you for taking the time. We know the job that you have is not an easy one. It is delicate. There are different territories that require different things and different approaches and strategies. But just know that you're not alone. and we love the work that you do.
Terry, thank you. And I look forward for us doing some good trouble together. Seriously.
Good trouble all the time. Thank you so very much. To my community, I thank you for being on this journey. You have seen me grow from strength to strength. You have seen all the things that I have done, and you have been a part of amplifying my voice. And I certainly hope that you enjoyed this very special conversation that I had with Special Advisor Sara Minkara, who is a Special Advisor on International Disability Rights, because disability rights is not just about the people with disabilities, it's everyone's rights. And when one person is oppressed, the entire society is oppressed. And so we are gonna put in the work, but we know that it is absolutely worth it. So there you have it, you heard it first. Open Door Jamaica Foundation is now open, and we are ready to do the work. Special Advisor Sarah, thank you. Safe travels, and I hope that all your meetings will be a productive one.
Thank you so much, Terry. It was such a wonderful time being here with you.
Oh, the pleasure is mine.